Okay, welcome again, everyone. Our first reader is Katie Daley. She is a poet, memoirist, and performer whose work has appeared on various stages as well as journals and anthologies. Her writing has won her three individual Creativity Excellence Awards from the Ohio Arts Council, and her memoir was a finalist in the 2020 Autumn House Press Nonfiction Prize. Along with teaching poetry in schools and community centers across Northeast Ohio, she is a community outreach teaching artist for the Wick Poetry Center at Kent State University. Her most recent book of poems is Any Closer to Home from Finishing Line Press in 2023. Welcome, Katie. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and welcome.
Hello, everybody. I'm trying to get my name off the screen there. Thank you so much for gathering to hear me and Oliver and Anya. I'm excited to hear Oliver and Anya. I'm gonna invite all of you who have not put your cameras on, at least just for a moment or two. I would love to see your faces to remove a little bit of the distance that comes with a Zoom reading, but feel free to stay completely private if you like. I just like trying to look into people's eyes when I read. So I'm going to read some prose and some poetry, and I'm going to start out with an excerpt from the memoir I've written about the hitchhiking migrant working journey I took across the USA in 1975 when I was 18 years old. 20 years after I mean, sorry, 20 hours after I left home, my brother Walter, who had been diagnosed as schizophrenic, killed himself.
Hmm.
I spent the next 18 months on the road trying to become as alive as possible while simultaneously reeling from his choice to die. This excerpt takes place on the morning I arrive in San Francisco after hitchhiking across the country with Vinny, a young man I met in Key West, who's become my traveling partner and boyfriend. We stand on the corner of Market and Turk, stunned by the honking horns and city buses wheezing by. For 2 weeks, we've been thumbing across a barely whispering prairie, a mute, mile-high range of boulders, and the speechless Colorado Plateau. I knew San Francisco was a big, bustling city, but after all the silence to the east of it, I was expecting it to be hushed by its own beauty, or at least in awe of the Pacific Ocean it's perched beside. The only hush I'm feeling now, though, is the silence in our empty pockets. We haven't had money since a roadside shop just outside the Grand Canyon, where we spent our last $4 on a pack of cigarettes and a six-pack of beer. It's not that we're hungry. All our rides since the Grand Canyon have been buying us sandwiches and sharing their apples and oranges. It's just that when you arrive empty-handed in a beautiful city teeming with well-dressed, polished people, you get right away that nobody's going to look you in the eye till you've got some cash, till you've got some heft and jingle in your pockets, weighing you down, keeping you from floating off into the fog. Vinny gets right down to it, rubbing his hands together like he can't wait to wrap them around this city. No problem, Katie. We'll panhandle. My heart sinks. In theory, I figure panhandling is a good skill to know. It's one more way to get people to spread the wealth. I think of Walter, my socialist brother, saying capitalists are into giveaways like soup kitchens because they keep hungry people from being disturbed enough to revolt. Walter, who just 3 months ago was so disturbed by his own schizophrenic mind, he ran off the top of a 10-story building and fell to his death. Maybe all the antipsychotic drugs he was on felt like soup kitchens to him. Maybe sleepwalking through life, doped down on Thorazine, didn't make him feel as human as his psychotic episodes did. Like the time he knocked on some of our neighbors' doors in the middle of the night, pleading with them to come outside in their bathrobes to celebrate the revolution. I thought he was hallucinating, but maybe at the bottom of it, he just wanted some company. I get what Walter meant about the political downsides of handouts. But here we are in the birthplace of the summer of love, the city where hippies made asking strangers to share their good fortune into a hip countercultural act, at least for a season or two. I want to be able to say I gave it a try. In the meantime, I stall. Wait a minute, Vinny. I don't know how to do this. Some people would narrow their eyes at me at this point and tell me to get it together, just do it. But not Vinny. He never presumes I'm an idiot because I don't know something. Besides, I'm pretty sure he, foster kid from working class Queens, gets a special thrill out of teaching this stuff to a never gone hungry girl from Shaker Heights, one of the wealthiest towns on the map. He puts his arm around me and gives me a squeeze. Ah, Katie, you'll be a pro in no time. You just gotta ask the right people. He glances up and down the sidewalk. First off, choose somebody who looks like they have some bucks. Nobody too fancy, though. The really rich ones are tight. That's how they got to be so rich, right? 'Cause they kept it to themselves. So don't even bother with them. Tap the ones who look like they're willing to part with a buck or two. Like that bald guy over there in the brown business suit with the glasses. See him? Check out his face. He looks like he might actually have a heart. He's your man. I study the guy for clues. His face is weary and his eyes are openly sad. As shiny and put together as most of these passersby are, though, pretty much everybody on this street looks weary. But this guy's not trying to hide it like they are. He's just straight up, no bones about it, bummed out. If I find enough sad, middle class people walking by, I think I just might be able to do this. Once you've found your mark, Vinny continues as the man passes out of sight, make sure you greet him. You gotta be polite, see? That's something a lot of panhandlers don't do. If you talk high class and look them in the eye, they think you might actually get a job someday. Nobody wants to donate to a dead-end cause. So, you wow them with your charms and you get them in the palm of your hand. Now you tell them your situation. What do you mean, my situation? That I'm broke? Yeah, you're broke, but what's broke to them? Chances are they never even had to scrounge under the couch cushions for bus fare. So you got to paint the picture for them so they see it, so they feel your growling gut, your growling belly in their own gut. Are you serious? Who's gonna stand there and listen to me describe how hungry I am? Katie, man, come on. You're a writer. You'll be a natural at this. I roll my eyes, but he's all business as he instructs me to follow him into the crowd, close enough to hear him lay out his snappy rap. Excuse me, sir. I just got in from New York. I'm broker than broke and hungry as hell. I'm looking for a job, but could use a nickel or dime in the meantime. Anything to help me get back on my feet. Ah, thank you, sir, and have a nice day. He sounds pretty slick and smarmy to me, but people are actually stopping and dropping coins into his upturned palm. Then I wonder, how greasy is my own sales pitch gonna be? What can I tell any of these people without lying? Excuse me, sir, my brother just killed himself and I don't know what to do or how to live. Obviously not. Still, asking strangers to help me out feels like a rite of passage that'll make me more human. Like being out here on the road, it's something I've got to do. I stuff my hands in my pockets so no one can see them shaking and walk up to a handsome white man in a business suit who looks like he's in his 30s. Vinny told me to aim for the middle-aged guys and old codgers, but I've already caught his attention, so I dive in. Excuse me, sir. I'm broker than broke. Ah, shit. I forgot to greet him. I start over. How are you doing today, sir? He's slowed down, but he looks at me impatiently. I just got in from New York City. I haven't eaten in days. If you could spare. What's the matter with you people? He breaks in as he reaches into his pocket. You're disgusting. Get a job, why don't you? He slaps a quarter into my palm and walks on. My face flushes. I call out, thank you, to his back, but it gets lost under the honks and hisses of traffic on Market Street. As it should. You're right, man. What's the matter with me? Why am I thanking you for calling me disgusting? As I scan the passing crowd in search of a face with heart, I flash on myself just a few years ago, a 13-year-old girl wandering through downtown Cleveland. All the times I shook my head and glanced away when people asked me for spare change. Did I look to them like I had a heart? I usually did have a few extra coins in my pocket, and I believed it would be an act of sisterly love to give them away. I'd heard enough stories by then about my grandfather during the Depression, how he'd take panhandlers out to lunch or into a department store to buy them a winter coat. I've always wanted to be like him, but when the moment came and the blind woman on Public Square rattled her tin cup at me, or the legless veteran called out to me from his creeper, I couldn't look them in the eyes. I was ashamed to have more money than them, more sight, more legs, more anything. A couple quarters wasn't going to buy back what they'd lost. And if I ever had enough dollars or nerve to take them out to lunch, what would we talk about? Obviously, I'm not my grandfather, not by a long shot. And I'm not the blind lady with the cup or the veteran who's lost his legs. I'm a lazy white girl from Shaker Heights who's blown her last few bucks on cigarettes and beer. I try a few more times, but whatever inspiration I had for it is gone. I lean against a storefront. I lean against a storefront to watch Vinny instead. He looks happy, excited, at home. I would give a lot to feel that way about talking to strangers. Not to ask them for money, but to be good at getting them to listen to my story. Nobody notices me here, so I'm free to study the streams of passersby without having to look like I've got my shit together. The business suits, the pantsuits, the fluttering scarves and careful hairdos, the clip-clop of high heels, each and every face, even the folks shuffling by in raggedy clothes and worn-out shoes, fixed in that cool, out-of-reach trance that comes over people when they're among strangers. Towards the end, nobody wanted to look Walter in the eyes either. He was way too weird, too honest, too up in our faces, pleading with us to admit we felt the same way as he did. Practically jumping in front of us and waving his arms like this was some kind of emergency. And it was. I thought he was the only one who was that lonely, but right now I'm thinking we all are. We're either broke or afraid of being broke, sad or afraid of being sad, or footsore from dancing through the crowd to make it look like none of that is true. Maybe all we want sometimes is a simple glance or nod. Maybe once in a while, without speaking a single word. We just need to let on to each other that we're in each other's company. Maybe if I were weird enough or honest enough, that's what I'd be out here asking for. Thank you. My attempt at imitating a New York accent, Queens accent, often slides into a Boston accent. So sorry about the amalgamation. Okay, I'm going to read a few poems now, and this first one is also inspired by the same journey about as the story I just read. And this part of the journey takes place when I'm picking apples in northern Oregon for 2 months with about 15 other migrant fruit pickers. Peanuts. This is gas station food, which is to say, the food of youth and moving on, hitchhiking to heaven, and a pack of cigarettes for supper. If payday is still far off into the emptiness, you can always tear the packet open with your teeth and pour the nuggets down your gullet before the proprietor suspects you're no good, plumb out of cash, and even one good excuse for exercising your right to be here, alive and hungry. Salty, oily, like sex and work, which is what we'd been doing all afternoon under the apple trees, spilling the boss man's harvest into bins the size of craters, and silence the size of Mount Hood, who watched us like a Buddha from 15 miles off, a glistening volcano who would give all this away in a heartbeat if only it were running the store. You'll need a beer and some good company to wash this down. You'll need to laugh a little when you hear the donkey on the other side of the valley bellowing his mournful protest. You can tell he understands much better than we do how sooner or later we'll all have lost our bearings, our chances, our siblings, our teeth. We'll have no cleverness with which to we'll have no cleverness with which to disappear the peanuts or swallow the sorrow. No sturdy legs to stand on by the side of the road. No carefree thumb to point into the wind, which was always and never going anywhere other than here. Thank you. I'm going to read three poems from my book, which my brother Tom, some of you know, Tom Daley, he illustrated the cover. I'm very proud of that. Okay, so this first one is very short, so I'm going to read it twice. It's called 2020. I asked the blithe guides and growling stones from all corners of the cosmos, how could or would or should I ever mute the mumbling blare of inner rills and world asunder? And they said, you and the world are an oboe, up in hiccups and flames. Be wide, be sky, send wind cool like mint through holy tone holes, and the rock in you that dozes in the sun. Come nightfall, the id will still plumb its whammy, and ocean still flint back at the moon, musing and singing and saying, even this trouble is a song. Even this trouble is a song. I ask the blithe guides and growling stones from all corners of the cosmos, how could or would or should I ever mute the mumbling blare of inner rills and world asunder? And they said, you and the world are an oboe, up in hiccups and flames. Be wide, be sky. Send wind cool like mint through holy tone holes, and the rock in you that dozes in the sun. Come nightfall, the id will still plumb its whammy, and ocean still flint back at the moon, musing and singing and saying, even this trouble is a song. This next one is for Tamir Rice, who, at the age of 12 years old, was gunned down and killed by police in a city park in Cleveland, Ohio, while he was playing with a toy gun. It's called His Mother Still Speaks in the Present Tense when she speaks of him. Tamir Rice is only 12 years old and still into Batman when those cops pull up to gun him down in the park. And it's entirely possible he's pretending to be a superhero in the moment they take him down. And you will too, if two white cops lurch out of their patrol car with their guns drawn while you're pretending to be a superhero. And you're black, and you love Curious George, and you still get spooked by the scary movies you watch with your older brother. Remember? You play sports with a swagger, can hit three-pointers on the court when you dribble with the high schoolers, but you still have it in you to crochet embroidery for your mother. Still crawl into bed with her some nights because some nights are harder to believe in than superheroes when you're a black boy in America. You don't care if that Lego model airplane you crave is for 5-year-olds. You want to fly, and you're going to fly. You're going to be a superhero, a cartoonist, the man who beats LeBron at his own game. You're going to throw a football with a spin so tight it's still spiraling through the skies of Cleveland today. And none of us are going to snag it without going down too. This is my last one for the evening, and really thank you so much for gathering here to listen. Uh, Listening is a underrated skill in our culture, and anybody who comes to a poetry reading has got some of that, so I really appreciate it. This one, I want to read this one especially to end on because I think it's really important in these very strange, dystopian, violent, insane times to remember to savor all the good, decent, joyful aspects of our humanity, minute by minute, moment by moment. It's called Reasons to be Cheerful in an Age of Really Bad News. There are breech menders in the world. They advertise their expertise on the sides of trucks. There are tea kettles that moan like trains, entire evenings that smell like rain. The county prison library is full of adult romance novels with the last 3 pages torn out. Your heart is still versatile enough to beat in that holy emptiness between your legs, between earthworms and stars, us and us. Everything passes. Every blister runs out of fester and steam. All eras weep and fade. You've seen worse days and better. You've heard Maria Callas and Deep Purple shatter the same courtyard under the same blue dome of morning, while at the other end of town, carpenters sang between hammer beats about how pretty they are. You've lived in a fungus lab, under a piano, by a river. Fellow travelers have wished you good courage as you struggled through the square under the weight of your hunger and your dreams. You've bought warm loaves of bread from strangers and carried each one home in the crook of your arm. Cretan widows have left peanut butter jars full of wildflowers on your doorstep. And in a laundromat somewhere not far from here, it's entirely possible the naked accordionist hasn't been arrested yet. He could still be squeezing out polkas to the beat of a load, while all the other patrons in the joint strip down to their underwear and dance. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Katie. That was wonderful. Um, so you will all notice that that David has posted in the chat links to the books for all three of our readers if you want to purchase them tonight. Our next reader is Anya Johanna DeNiro. She is a trans woman and writer living in St. Paul, Minnesota. She grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania, and received a BA in English from the College of Worcester and an MFA in creative writing from the University of Virginia. Her novel OK Psyche was published by Small Beer Press in September 2023. City of a Thousand Feelings was published by Aqueduct Press in 2020 and was on the honor roll for the Otherwise Award. Her short fiction has appeared in many venues, including One Story, Catapult, Asimov's, Strange Horizons, Santa Monica Review, Diagram, and elsewhere. Her work has been a finalist for the Crawford Award and the Theodore Sturgeon Award, and longlisted for the Frank O'Connor International Short Story Award. Please welcome Anya.
Hi. Thank you so much for inviting me to this. I'm just thrilled to be here on a dark winter night from people halfway across the country, mostly. So everyone can hear me okay? Okay, cool. And just as like a prelude, I'm not going to read from it, so I thought I meant my novel, OK Psyche. It's a second person kind of chronicle of the interiority of a trans woman. Lots of weird stuff happens. My publisher, actually, Small Beer Press, is in East Hampton, and they have a bookstore, Book Moon Books, so you should visit them if you're over that way. But first, I'm going to read a poem. I've actually been the last 6 months really digging deep into poetry, so I just wanted to read a poem, and then I'll read a kind of something new, a short story. I've read a lot from the novel in the last year and a half, so it'll be kind of a new experiment for me to read from a new story. So, but this poem is called "Panic Attack at the Dollar Tree," and this is literally the first time I've read poetry in a you know setting, a public reading in like 15 some years. So I'm very happy to do it. Panic Attack at the Dollar Tree. I bought a fake security camera at the Dollar Tree. I realized my therapy appointment was on Thursday instead of Friday. It was Thursday. My kids watched me as I started to lose it. Shrine, shrine, shrine of the panic attack at the Dollar Tree next to the balloon station. Who knows? Who knows what kind of mother I am when the arsenal opens my chest up and the balloon station is always closed. It just is. Make it so I cave in. My daughter squeezes my hand. Could this style be more than dysregulation, a recounting of it, and its subprime memory of the wilder? Attack at the Dollar Tree. How are we to say anything, find anything? My cat sits on my lap now and wants for nothing, and the kids are at the parents of my ex-wife, and the carpentry of the known world breathes through me, but shallowly. I have a desk job and it hurts. I can't disclose much about them, my children, except for the way they hold my hand and the celestial panic attack at the Dollar Tree, which hounds shadows. As a mother who had to make herself mother, I understand this. I understand love. I do. And the strip malls are never quiet. Last week, my son ran across a parking lot and was 6 inches from a woman backing into him. He is 12. They are 12. They have the carelessness of 12, and how I so want to erase the chimera of my own anxiety and its affect coursing into me and doubt in the Dollar Tree. But the kids are overall kind. Motherhood is a rampart overwhelming, and yet the wonders simply refuse to cease. Shrine, shrine, all right, and the terror and the signs. Okay, that's a poem. I'm going to read a story for me called Wild Birds Unlimited. So yeah, well, it doesn't appear in the story, but Wild Birds Unlimited is the name of a chain, like birdseed store. So that's where I got it from. Okay, Wild Birds Unlimited. I know that a bird has never murdered a trans woman. I know that a birch tree has never told a trans woman, take off that dress. I'm trying to do better. I decide I want to put up a bird feeder. I have a little yard, which I share with the man upstairs, who I almost never see. I have trouble picturing his face, actually. I haven't made any amendments to the yard since I moved in. I haven't used the brick fire pit. I haven't used the lacquered pine bench that I presumed my upstairs neighbor made. A bird feeder would be nice, though. When I first came out, I put on my full makeup when going to the grocery store. I didn't want to be perceived as unnatural. Now I can't be bothered. Sweatpants and hoodie. If they look, they look. If they laugh, they laugh. It's not even camouflage. As a kid, as a boy, I once was a boy of sorts. My horizons were also small, though in a much different way. I had once flown high after I first transitioned, but I crashed. And after I crashed, I retreated into my duplex. But back when I was a boy, however, there was no flight. When I was 10 or 11, I was driving with my mom on the east side of town, and at the gate at the railroad crossing stayed down, even though there were no trains. After waiting a couple minutes, my mom told me to get out and lift the gate up. This was easier than it might have seemed because of the leverage. And I didn't think of this as dangerous at all. A man in a delivery truck said, could you hold it open for me while I go through? A line had formed, and he left out a crate of orange juice, about 4 cartons. I said sure and let the truck through. As I was lowering the gate, another car skirted through. It might have been a sports car or just a sedan. I started screaming as I lifted the gate the best I could, leaning my whole body against the fulcrum. But I kept imagining the gate smashing into his windshield, and if he braked, it would have been too late, as the rail gate might have decapitated him. I kept thinking of that over and over, how close I was to killing a man who couldn't wait 20 seconds to ask me to hold the gate open. I haven't ever talked to my mom about this, whether she remembers it the same way. I ought not to care about this. The sky is gray. I'm trying to come up with something that's not true, but it is true the sky is gray. It's warm for December, and I suppose that means something too. When I think about people reaching out to me as a friend, my first thought is to think of it as more of a visitation from a comforter. I expect and or excuse me, I expect and or demand the comfort. But then I realize that this is not the only function of a friend. It's a one-way street, and I know this isn't healthy. I know this is a product of the internet and my recent past, of course. Like I said, I'm trying to do better. My mom emails me a picture of a snake she found in her driveway. It had recently died. The snake was about 3 feet long, far longer than any she had seen in her entire life in those parts. The winter is also warm and erratic where she lives. Nearly every winter has been warm of late. The snake is also black with red stripes. She's not sure what to do about the body. At some point in the future, I wonder if this mass depersonalization will be a boon, and that this personal dysregulation and moreover the coping mechanisms that arise will be seen as necessary traits. A sort of unwillingness to engage in all sorts of matters would be considered a baseline and not antisocial. If I were to be hit by a drunk driver, by my body frozen and brought back many centuries later with my feelings latent and attacked, what then? Some people, I imagine, would be altered by bird DNA or snake DNA. What then? What then? I want rest. I want to watch a bird eating seeds, but it's getting late. I text the man upstairs. I got his number from when I first moved in for emergencies. He works as a project manager at an engineering firm or something. I don't believe I've ever had a conversation with him. He comes home late at night, around 10 or so, and then vacuums all of his floors. I haven't had the nerve to ever tell him to stop. It's unnerving, though. Hey, I was wondering if you'd minded if I put up a bird feeder in the backyard. I know the ground is frozen, but I could figure something out. Send. I wait 3 days for an answer, but there isn't an answer. I see his car come and go, so I know he is around. Silence is getting out of hand. On the third day, I say, fuck it, and order a bird feeder and see it online. In the meantime, the weather turns suddenly inclement, sleet, then snow. Everything is blanketed in uniform white. I text my mom to see if she's getting snow 5 states away. Yes, she's getting hammered. The snake corpse isn't there anymore, my mom also says. Something had dragged it away, maybe a coyote or something else, but there aren't tracks anymore because of the snow. My duplex has a lean to it. Put a suitcase on the porch and it slides down. It's a gag house. I don't have money for a bed frame yet. I worry about the birds getting confused by the chaotic weather. Still, I enjoy the house. I like it that it was built on the edge of the 1800s. Dvorak visited the music hall kitty corner to me in 1893. It's now a set of apartments with a CrossFit studio on the first floor. I feel like I have a responsibility to the birds. Birds don't care about the lean of my apartment. They too are trying to survive the winter. At last, I get the package of the bird feeder and seed. The ground is half frozen, like a popsicle that has been sitting in the back of a freezer all year. I dig a little hole with the gardening trowel and push the bird feeder pole into the earth as best I can. It's a little wobbly. It starts to snow again. I rub my hands together slowly. I put the seed into the little house and then go back outside and wait. I need a breakfast nook table and two chairs in order to look out the window. One chair for me and an aspirational chair, a whole chair. No birds come during the twilight, but I realize I have to give them time to find their way. The drunk driver escapes from the crash with minor injuries, splits a birch tree in two, kills two passengers. I sleep dreaming of a flock of chickadees carrying me away over my house, over the music hall, the railroad tracks, and the river. I hear the distant thrum of the Seventh Symphony. I am happy. I get up at dawn and see through my back window that the bird feeder has been torn out. The seed is everywhere on the snow, like droplets of yellow blood that had been crystallized. I go to the front door. My upstairs neighbor had leaned my feeder up against the little mailbox. I take it inside. A few stray seeds drop into my living room and the kitchen. I lay it down on the kitchen floor and sit with it. I sit there for a long time. Question: has the world been getting more cynical, coarser, meaner, broken down? I don't know. Fantasizing about a time when people were kinder might be the most tired illusion of all, or people were hiding their cruelty better, or people imagined themselves not to be this way, but figured everyone else was cynical, coarse, and mean. And absence creates its own truth. An act of force creates a hole, something that needs to be filled in. I first met her at a burlesque show in the heart of winter, or rather, it was an open warehouse where people were doing various burlesque and circus type things, but without an overarching narrative. It was very off the books. I didn't know anyone there. I just decided to go. She was doing aerial at the top of a pole that went halfway up to the rafters. The base of the pole was a circular metal platform, but a rather small one. Anyway, at one point, she leaned too far and the base began to tip. She tried to throw her weight in the other direction, and it helped a little, but she still crashed to the ground with the pole in her hands. She was okay, and don't know how. She rolled into the fall. After she got ice for her shoulder, I went over and asked her if she was all right. She said yes, not the worst fall she's had. She told me she didn't want to sue the owner of the club because if word got out, the place would be shut down. She loved it too much. When I have an image of her, I keep thinking of her flying through the air like that, trying to control descent. We became friends. There are precious few other trans women in the city that I knew. There are many other things I could say about her. She didn't have a home, but migrated from down south. She strung jobs together and served couches. Eventually, she became my roommate, not in the duplex, but before that. I even took her with me for Thanksgiving at my mom's. She regaled my mom with stories of the raves and circuses she performed in all around the Gulf Coast. She told me about the secret societies of gay life on the Florida panhandle. All the same, she would drift in and out of my life. She stayed with men she found who had found her. She wouldn't come home for weeks at a time. She was, apologetic, but also bemused that I was worried about her. She died in a car accident about a month after the last time she left. She was in the front seat, and a man was driving, and there was another trans woman in the back seat. The man was sentenced to community service on time served. That was when I moved to the duplex. There are three other people at her memorial service besides the minister. They're all performers at that warehouse show where I'd first met her. A fire dancer grabbed my shoulder as the minister read from the Diamond Sutra. I didn't really know her, but I'm so sad, they said. I still don't know where they buried her. The snow has stopped. I hear the birds from across the river swooping down into the dead reeds. This is where I'm at. I'm on the floor in my kitchen. I'm trying to do better. I really am. After a few hours, I go into the backyard. I see that some birds during my fugue state had eaten some of the seeds on the ground. I could see the imprint of their tiny claws. That at least brings a little comfort. I don't know where she is. I hope she wakes up 100 years from now with a body upgraded with a code of snakes and birds, and she can live forever. I stamp my feet. I say, like I'm beginning a story. The seeds stream out of my mouth like I'm a grain elevator with a hole blasted out of its side. I want to be useful versus not having any needs at all. Thanks.
Anya, that was fantastic. That was, oops, I am unmuted. Sorry. That was wonderful. I really enjoyed that. Um, our next reader is Oliver de la Paz. He is the Poet Laureate of Worcester and, he's the Poet Laureate of Worcester, Massachusetts for 2023 to 2025. He is the author and editor of 7 books: Names Above Houses, Furious Lullaby, Requiem for the Orchard, Post Subject, A Fable, and The Boy in the Labyrinth, a final for the Massachusetts Book Award in Poetry. His newest work, The Diaspora Sonnets, is published by Live Right Press 2023. With Stacy Lynn Brown, he co-edited A Face Beats the Faces, an anthology of contemporary persona poetry. Oliver serves as the co-chair of the Kundiman Advisory Board. His work has appeared in the New York Times, Poetry, American Poetry Review, and elsewhere. He has received grants from the NEA, NYFA, the Artists Trust, the Massachusetts Cultural Council, and has been awarded multiple pushcart prizes. He teaches at the College of the Holy Cross and in the low residency MFA program at PLU. Oliver, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you all. Thank you for that intro, and it was wonderful to hear your work, Anya and Katie. It was really great to sit in and participate in this. And thank you for joining us on Zoom on a very, very blustery winter evening. Here in Worcester, it is about 20 degrees with a wind chill, dropping it down to the zeros. So what a great time for poetry, right? Nice and cozy. So I'm going to read a particular genre of which I'm expert, and that is dad poems. So I'm going to read a bunch of dad poems. Apologies, just to sort of give you a heads up. My 3 sons are on the autism spectrum, and among the things that are challenging for them is dressing themselves, and particularly in the early days when they were growing up. And this is a mini essay, a lyric essay / poem, if you want to call it that has little spaces in it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to snap my finger whenever you run into a space so that you can sort of understand the pacing of the piece. This is a poem entitled On Dressing Sons, a Colloquy. On Dressing Sons, a Colloquy. Beneath my fingers, the buttons and the small worship of their clasps. Capacious. The world between breaths is capacious. Think of the potentials of a bare stage. Think of the riggings in the darkness. The curtains slide back, zippers and hems. The mouths of shoes, empty of them. They are animal and full of ache and shape, Or they are shorn of shape and have filled the interstices of my thought. Or they are neither mine nor theirs, nor the idea of theirs, the rind of their clothing in heaps on the floor. Lungs in and out change the capacity of their shirts so that I am clothing a kind of buoyancy. Ritual by which the sun will not touch them. Ritual by which they will not feel cold. Ritual by which the wicked shall be repelled. Ritual by which we shall know them in a crowd. In another country, they would own one outfit. They would take turns wearing it. They will be each other in stages. We will preserve our memories of who we were in seeing them dressed. I woke to find the eldest nude, facing the dresser. He stands and sways. There are no breezes in the house, but he makes his own breezy movements. Because he is 10 and cannot tie his shoes, he insists I double knot every shoe to eliminate potentials. Hinged from their shoulders of flamboyance, color on their skin like a skin, collars askew in their plaid Sunday shirts, tidied up feet, steady little birds. And we will step into our potentials, and we will witness gilded cars breeze past with their wanting to shear us from our fabrics, and we will clutch our collars, holding our skins together so that we may know our skin, so that I may keep them held and whole. Thank you. This is another poem, another dad poem, but the situation is inverse. This is about my dad, and this is something that happened recently. We're sort of in the business of taking care of things towards the end of their lives, and one of the requirements of a funeral home was that they have my mother and my father have their funeral portraits taken. And so this is a poem about that. It's entitled, "My Father Asks Me to Take His Funeral Portrait." The light isn't right. The glare from the windows pierces my father's glasses, and he squints as I press the button on my phone. Again, he tells me, take it again. And I oblige, trying to find a position that would hold him as he is now, though he is constantly moving to avoid the light. I wonder how long we will continue this dance, he rejecting the posture, and I, always the dutiful but acerbic son, obeying in my dour way. And I tell him I can buffer out any blemishes or blur the wrinkles in the software. I can cut and blend and sculpt his face into something that pleases him at last. I tell him that the photo is only a start, that I can remake him into an ideal image of himself, but he is never happy in this life or in what the afterlife will see, how he will go on shifting in his place, unsure of who will witness how uncomfortable the hereafter, or at least the process of gathering the self into the hereafter is. And in this case, how this memento of him that will watch us long after his death must be perfect, because there is only this one moment of the possible, while the light is at the perfect angle in the winter sun through the shades. Thank y'all. So I grew up in Eastern Oregon, in a small town called Ontario, Oregon. And it was sort of a lonely place. It was a place that I couldn't wait to leave. And just I'll draw you a map. This is my map of Idaho, and this is Oregon. It might be reversed on your angle. And Ontario is right there where I grew up. It's right sort of on the border, right along the Snake River. It is known for being a community that has an Ore-Ida factory where they process potatoes and sugar beets. And it is a community that has a maximum security prison. And those are the two things of note. In defense of small towns, when I look at it, it's simple, really. I hated life there. September, once filled with animal deaths and toughened hay, and the smells of fall were boiled down beets and potatoes, or the farmhands' breeches smeared with oil and diesel as they rode into town, dusty and pissed. The radio station split time between Metal and Tejano, and the only action happened on Friday nights where the high school football team gave everyone a chance at forgiveness. The town left no room for novelty or change. The sheriff knew everyone's son, and despite that, we'd cruise up and down the avenues, switching between brake and gear shift. We'd fight and spit chew into big gulp cups and have our hearts broken nightly. In that town, I learned to fire a shotgun at 9 and wring a chicken's neck with one hand by twirling the bird and whipping it straight like a towel. But I loved the place once. Everything was blonde and cracked, and the irrigation ditches stretched to the end of the earth. You could ride on a bicycle and see clearly the outline of every leaf, or catch on the streets each word of a neighbor's argument. Nothing could happen there. And if I willed it, the place would have me slipping over its rocks into the river with the sugar plant's steam, or signing papers at a storefront army desk, buttoned up with medallions and a crew cut, eyeing the next recruits. If I've learned anything, it's that I could be anywhere, staring at a hunk of asphalt or listening to the clap of billiard balls against each other in a bar and hear my name. Indifference now? Some. I shook loose, but that isn't the whole story. The fact is, I'm still in love. And when I wake up, I watch my son yawn, and my mind turns his upswept hair into corn stalks at the edge of the field. Stillness is an acre, and his body idles deep like heavy machinery. I want to take him back there, to the small town of my youth, and hold the book of wildflowers open for him and look. I want him to know the colors of horses, to run with a cattail in his hand and watch as its seeds fly weightless, as though nothing mattered, as though the little things we tell ourselves about our past stay there, rising slightly and just out of reach. Thank you all. So I've been carefully watching these the catastrophe that's happening in Los Angeles. I lived in Los Angeles for 5 years. For 3 of those years, I was an EMT, working in LA County, and in particular the Culver City area, up and down, close to or adjacent to the Marina Del Rey area. And so a lot of the guys that are out there working, I know. And so I'm thinking about them, and I'm thinking about you know, that town when I was in my early and mid 20s, which is, you know, a place that I love. This is a poem about fire, namely a poem about controlled burns that happen in Eastern Oregon from time to time, but it's also a poem about escape. Self-portrait as the burning plains of Eastern Oregon. Let me start with fire. A little blaze lit to clear back the scrub brush brought by the winter storms. Let the air ting with each leaf pop as the ash of prairie grasses rise skyward, and let that fire grow with each gust shot straight out of the Cascades far to the west. The curlicues of smoke fill a sky void of mountains, while the corralled horses several hundred yards away pace nervously back and forth. I'm trying to remember how everything settles down after a fire, how the outcroppings of rock stand out farther in those charred, moonish surfaces. I'm trying to remember the nonchalance of a boy used to such things, how the seasonal burnings turn the sky umber, and how each wind seemed to fill our houses with soot. Springtime meant that everything would burn, and so I, too, would torch my name into every picnic bench, every combustible. A book of matches and a boy was never an accident, nor was the little recourse I had in those days. Boredom was an arrow shot straight into the ground. But I'm here now. My name is not a fire. My name is not a story of fire. I've got nothing in common with that element save contempt for the place of my youth and a hunger for air. I'm watching the horses closely, how they've started to canter in circles as the heat from the brush blurs the atmosphere, makes everything look like it's underwater. But there's beauty in their fear, like the stun of a hushed landscape after a catastrophe. And there's beauty in a boy, shameless in his need for moments to explode. That hunger, if you hold your breath long enough, you can feel the weight of the horses as they run faster and faster circles, but really, they're in no mortal danger. They'll settle down to a trot, then rub their sides against the fence posts to feel warmth. Time takes air and fuel, and in the end, what's left is smoke. A blacked out soda can, maybe a plastic lid fused to stone. A refusal to forget childhood's scald, but also a kind of forgiveness. Really, there's nowhere to run save in ever widening arcs. In that broad expanse of charred land, the wind moves without impediment like a boy grown used to his name. And what's left of the brush crumbles to the touch. And thank you. And I'm going to close with this poem. Let me find it real quick. Apologies. So I used to live in Washington State, and this house that I purchased with my wife was adjacent to land that was owned by the Department of Natural Resources. And so we bought this house, and the year after our purchase, they clear cut all the acreage. So it was just completely blank, naked. You could just, it was awful. But there were some gifts that were left behind. And this is my last poem. It's entitled Meditation with Smoke and Flowers. It is Monday, and I'm not thinking of myself. My son asleep in his stroller, the dark conifers holding nothing but their scent. I'm walking into the place where loggers have cleared 30 acres, leaving only ash and stripped tree limbs. Light now comes to the places once dark, and now wildflowers, where once the moss grew thick and complete. The flame of something around the corner, and I'm thinking of the wild tiger lilies that line this gravel road below my house, how they clump together, their stems bent from the weight of their flowers, how mouse-like they are, and how their speechlessness makes the road quieter. Each flower is a surprise, like the flaming tip of cigarettes in the dark. I think that the road cannot contain all these mounds, though there are mythologies held in check by the tongue, like the story my father told me about his father in wartime, and how his own father forced him with the threat of a beating to go under the house for a cigarette from a Japanese foot soldier bunkered down. I can see my father's small trembling hand outstretched to this man, whose face is mud-caked, smelling slightly of fire and lubricant for his rifle. The smoke from the soldier's own cigarette takes the shape of the underside of the house, and I imagine my father can hear his own father above him pacing. But this road now is free of smoke. The logging trucks have taken off for the night, and the tree remnants have smoldered into nothing but charcoal. The wreck of everything is a vacuum. So too the wreck of a village after war, or the floorboards above a son's head in fear of his own father. Here, though, there's nothing to fear. The wheels of the stroller on gravel is the only sound, and the idleness of the excavation trucks hearkens to someone asleep in the uneasy dark. No, I'm not thinking of myself. I'm thinking of an agreement my father must have made with himself years ago when the houses were burning into bright bouquets in the nighttime. How perhaps he swore he would not beat his own son, while somewhere in the afterlife his own father smokes and paces. Perhaps there are no flowers in that place. Perhaps the lone soldier, through with hiding, crawled out after the guns had stopped and dusted himself off, the sun striking his face with its unreasonable light. I'm thinking of my son asleep and of the wild tiger lilies, how frail they are in the new light, why they come, why they spring up unannounced, as suddenly as the promises we make with ourselves when we are young. Thank you all. And apologies for the alarm. I didn't want to be that guy. Thanks.
No problem. Thank you, Oliver. And thanks to all three of our readers tonight. Really wonderful readings from all three of you. I just wanted to mention that our next reading, I found out I reminded myself who the readers are for next month, but not the actual date. So that'll be
February 14th.
February 14th. All right, Valentine's
Day.
We will be on Zoom again, and our readers are Matthew J.C. Clark, Jessica Purdy, and Adam Scheffler. So hope you can join us for that. And at this point, if you would like to, actually, Dorothy, am I forgetting anything that you need to announce?
Just to say that we buy a copy of each of the readers' books.
Yes.
And we have a special collection in the Jamaica Plain branch of the Boston Public Library. So your books are deposited in the Boston Public Library for anyone to enjoy.
Great. Yes.
Exactly.
So we could unmute and actually audibly applaud and thank people.
Thank you all so much.
Yes. Yes. Been a great evening. And I have plopped the links in the chat a sufficient number of times, more times now. So Bernadette, I see your request. You emailed me earlier today. Please email me again and I will add you to the mailing list.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dave.
For certain. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks again, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oliver, Katie, Anya.
Thank you so much. It's nice meeting you.
Thank you so much.